My name is Raymond Friel. I'm a professor of law at the School of Law at the University of Limerick, and currently also acting as head. And it gives me great pleasure today to be with one of our graduates, Laura Butler, who is a partner with A&L Goodbody in the area of finance. Welcome, Laura. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.
No, it's great to see our alumni and graduates doing so well. And I suppose I'll just start the ball rolling really effectively by asking a question. How did you get where you are today? What drove you towards finance? Not everybody's cup of tea. No,
not everybody's cup of tea. And certainly it wouldn't have been on my agenda as such when I was filling my CAO form necessarily. But I think if we were to pull it back to a particular point, it was driven by the fact that I did my training contract in one of the large corporate law firms. So not actually A&L Goodbody as it happened, but Matheson. And their focus is corporate law, and so there's a real, lot of the client base is finance. So a lot of banks, and outside of that, asset managers, and A&L Goodbody is exactly the same. So when I qualified for Matheson, I spent a year or so there, and then I moved over to A&L Goodbody, largely because actually we were working on a particularly high-profile deal. And A&L Goodbody happened to be on the other side, so I got introduced to a partner in A&L Goodbody that way. It was a sale at the time of Bank of Ireland's asset management branch arm, and that was sort of kicked things off. So it was through that initial introduction by way of a training contract with Matheson really started it.
And I suppose in some sense, and I always say this, I teach a number of different classes in financing and security, aviation financing and credit and security. And one of the things I keep telling my students effectively is, to some extent as lawyers, we tend not to realize just how important a role finance plays with respect to the work that we do when you graduate. Would you think that's a fair comment, Laura?
Yeah, I think it's connected in so many ways, because certainly in our job, it's finance, but also you're a business advisor in a lot of ways with a legal hat on, and your role can be extremely varied, extremely different to necessarily what you might do in-house. And luckily, thank God, in a large law firm like A&L Goodbody, you're specialized in your particular area, which for me is asset management and investment funds. But you work cross-sectorally, so I'll work with my colleagues in corporate on M&A, I'll work with my colleagues in banking on a finance transaction, and you need to also be slightly familiar with what they do, you need to understand what they do. You're not a specialist necessarily, thank God.
No. Yeah.
It all connects together, so like that, we'll structure funds through, we'll structure aviation structures through investment funds as well, and so you need to understand what they do. So it's that element of law and finance means it's kind of an intersection of lots of different areas, actually, the way it works out.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key features, isn't it, really, of a law graduate, in a sense, the ability to sort of see outside your own discipline, even though we do study quite in silo base. But once you get out there in the real world, there's that sort of interconnectedness, I think, that very often you benefit from as a lawyer, because you're much more able, I think, to move around in an area.
That's it, exactly. And we'll always look, each year we'll look, when we're planning the year, we'll say, well, if something dreadful were to happen in our sector, what skills do we have that would transfer into something else? So you can say, well, push comes to shove, I'd probably go work with the team in banking, or I'd do something to help them out, or that's where I could see myself if for tomorrow asset management and investment funds fell apart. So you do need to be really transferable. You need to understand what your colleagues are doing, but yeah, it makes that job just that bit more interesting, actually.
I do remember earlier on in my career trying to teach people about business and business law, and all that business stuff will be in the middle of the newspaper where only the very specialists would read it. And of course, from the financial crisis onwards, it becomes almost like a front page aspect. And even still today, there's that. What are some of the sort of interesting jobs that you think you've had during your career in finance?
Oh, gosh, we've worked on really cutting edge deals, but I digress, because when I was thinking back from the journey before we spoke today, I was thinking back to some of the different kind of milestones I had in my career. And as it happens, nothing to do with finance necessarily, but in one of my first jobs after I graduated, the law firm I worked at, Gleeson McGrath Baldwin at that time, they were instructed on behalf of the state to oh gosh, it was a constitutional challenge of the Health Amendment Bill. So there I was, you know, 1 year out of college, and I was in the Supreme Court with all of these Supreme Court judges that I had been citing for the last 4 years, and there, you know, there they all were, you know, that was actually at the time mind blowing. But then as you know, as your career progresses, yeah, definitely you see some of the deals that appear in the newspaper, and try to think if there's anything I can share.
Well, no, and I'm very conscious when I was saying that. No question of wishing quite confidentiality. No, I was just
no, yeah, no. There's certainly some. So I'm thinking that maybe 2-3 years ago, one of the funds that we set up in Ireland with Oaktree. So Oaktree's an asset manager with an office in London and based out of the LA. And they had set up a fund with us years and years and years ago, actually, when I was quite junior. And they spun it out into an IPO of a property development company. So things like that are, again, it come back to that point about working with your colleagues in real estate, working with your colleagues in M&A and in corporate, that, you know, I set up a fund day to day, I help you run your fund day to day, but then tomorrow I could be working with you on an IPO of that fund, that was sort of, you know, that was very unusual and very interesting. That was another good one.
Yes. And I think what you're bringing out there quite a lot is a sort of teamwork approach that seems to be key mark increasingly of the legal profession. Because you're no longer working, in many ways people have an idea that you're working as a sort of a sole practitioner in a relatively small town, but working in A&L Goodbody is slightly different, I would imagine.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and I would have, growing up, that's where I would have spent my summer holidays and my Easter break. I would have gone into a law firm in Waterford in town and spent time there organising their title deeds and whatnot. And really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. But yes, yeah, in a large law firm like that, even in things like business generation, so the law firm is a business, so my client might be mine today, but it might be my colleagues in banking, or God forbid litigation tomorrow, if something's gone wrong. So it's very joined up. A big law firm like that, a corporate law firm like that, is very, very joined up, which is great because I spend a lot of time there, so it's very collegiate. It's nice to have, you know, friends and partners and others that you can rely on in there. So it makes it nice. You know, it makes it quite nice to work there.
And I suppose, Laura, again, it's always a kind of a question. What I've noticed since my time going in teaching law from UL and around the world is the increasing number of graduates coming out, females, you know, and the growth of that. And that's great, actually. I think it's not before its time. I suppose one of the questions I think it might be nice to ask you now is, what advice, or how did you feel it was working predominantly was a male-dominated profession? Did you find it easy, or have you found it sort of challenging along the way?
I think irrespective of gender, I think throughout my career I've been really lucky to have worked for people who maybe saw the earnestness and saw my work ethic, maybe, and diligence. And I would say by no stretch am I the smartest in the room ever, but I'm probably one of the hardest working. So I think the people I work for saw that, and I always felt supported in the jobs that I had along the way. So my first job out of college with Gleeson McGrath Baldwin, I mean, they were, you know, there was one or two partners there that I would have worked closely with, and they were incredibly supportive. And moving to Matheson, then there was a couple of partners, and they were terribly supportive. And they weren't always, you know, not always necessarily women, male partners too, really root for you and try and help you along in a really, just, I guess, taking at face value that you you would be a good person to work with. You would be a good person to have on the team. Certainly it would be, it would be great. And I've met really successful, really impressive women along the way. Just not necessarily from a numbers perspective, just not the same number as men, which is changing, but that's good. That's good. And now it's my turn to make sure that that I'm the person who's championing people as they come along, and they know that they can come to me, and I'll be looking out for that same earnestness and that same diligence, and that I'll have their back when it comes to it. But a challenge, not necessarily. It's not always easy, but definitely this isn't an easy job anyway. So it just adds a dimension to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, and I think it's great, in fairness, that it has become much more, and you're right, it'll take a while for that sort of equality to show through, because the issue really becomes, for lawyers in particular, when you're trying to serve your clients, I think it is about, performance and results and your ability to deliver. And it's great, in fairness, at least many men hopefully are moving along to the idea of that rather than classifying people. But it's just one of the areas to say is that finance is such a sort of particularly a male dominated area, where there's a lot of testosterone running around the place and so on like that. So just curious about your own experiences in it.
They're definitely, it's definitely evolving, and I've had some very progressive bosses who spot like that, particularly in areas like business development, where everybody, there's a routine, there's a kind of a set of things that are done in terms of business development that aren't always necessarily, not always necessarily things that women are interested or they're, can be gender specific, but you have partners that you kind of work for people that look out for that and kind of say, okay, it's a rugby match, and I don't know if you like rugby, as it happens I do, but it's a rugby match. Why don't you come along, even though you might not, the first person that comes to mind might be a male associate or a male solicitor. They'll rewire their initial thinking, and they'll think, she'd be a good person to bring along, or she worked on that deal and she should come along. So definitely it's not all plain sailing at things like golf. Everybody plays golf. Yeah, well, but especially in finance, but not all women play golf. And I took it up as soon as I possibly could when I noticed it. But it's not one of my favorite things to do. So it can be hard to kind of force that type of thing. But you tend to find the things that come naturally to you, where you can engage with clients and things like that tend to resolve themselves. And as much as it's male dominated, there are loads more women coming through. So sometimes it's great for me as a woman to kind of look out for things that I can do with female clients or male clients that just might not be interested in golf or something different. But yeah, definitely, I think the challenge from a business development perspective is it just requires a little bit of thinking, a little bit of just thinking outside the box. But
yeah, no,
it all sorts itself out.
Obviously, because you've done very well, and on the issue of golf, yeah, it was one of the things I was always advised to start up, but I really can't stand the game, and unlike you, I wasn't prepared to put the effort into it. It's way too much activity for me, even if it's relatively laid back. So Laura, listen, before we sort of wrap this up, and it's been great speaking to you today and getting an insight into it, I suppose just a couple of things, and feel free to say what you want to say. I suppose maybe you've just had some recollections of your time at UL. Oh, be careful again here.
Yeah, I loved my time at UL. I made some of my best friends there. Granted, I think I might have been a little bit, maybe a bit immature, maybe a bit naive going into it. But I absolutely loved it. And my sister came 2 years after me. She did a business degree 2 years after me, and she now works at PwC. So yeah, that was testament to how much I loved it. The campus, the faculty, everything was great. And I think I initially selected it because of the curriculum that was on offer, but it was so much more than than that. You know, it was the people you met. It was, like I said, it was the faculty. So I think I don't think I probably made enough of what was on offer there in terms of support and help. I'd probably maybe just that idea of you just got to get on with it, you should figure it out yourself, rather than putting your hand up and saying, is this the best way to go about doing this? Is this the best way to come at it? I think it was just maybe a little bit immature. But now I see the graduates now, because I go down a lot to recruit from UL for A&L Goodbody, and it's something that I'm thrilled to see. They're far more savvy. They're far more aware of what's on offer, and they're far more aware of how to avail of it. And I think they certainly, I think that they're a very bright group that's coming out of UL now, and I'm thrilled to see it. And I'm so excited when we can hire from that pool. They're a tremendous bunch. Yeah,
and we're really happy that we have a great relationship with A&L Goodbody, as you know, and our MOOC court is sponsored at the moment by A&L Goodbody, which is great. Sorry, go ahead now.
Well, it's things like that, Ray. You know, it's they're all involved in the moots and the debates and the law society. They're so much more involved than I was then, and if I were to do anything differently, it would be that it was simply to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are there and that are available to the students, because there's, you know, it's huge, and it's such a benefit down the line. It's massively helpful.
You know, it is to take the opportunities of things that are there, like, you know, as you say, the MOOC court and so on like that, and the debating, and we try to create that culture. You've had a really fascinating career, to be honest with you, as I say, and I was taken most by what you started out with when you talked about your experience with that health law case before the Supreme Court. It's amazing for us, I think, as faculty members, to consider that our graduates have moved on so much. You know, in a sense, we've kind of frozen you in time, as that, you know, to see that, you know, within a short period of time, you can find yourself before that sort of prestigious body. That really is superb.
Yes, and I would say all of those opportunities that came my way were because I didn't go that direct route, because I simply wasn't savvy enough to know what the next step should have been that far in advance. So I was always maybe a year behind, you know, the really savvy students, that, you know, they had done their FE1 straight away as soon as they possibly could. They had them done that first summer that we were finished up. I wasn't that savvy. So in actual fact, you know, I was due to go to the UK rather than to go to Blackhall. I was doing an LPC in Blackhall, and then I changed my mind because all my friends were going to Dublin, and none of those things none of the route that my career took, no part of that, you know, it was all unexpected, because it was all things I kind of managed as they faced them. So on the one hand, I was so disappointed that I hadn't done my FE1s when I should have done. On the one hand, I was so disappointed I didn't have my training contract lined up. But I had all of these fantastic opportunities as a result of the, you know, the various winds and turns and unexpected occurrences in my career as a result. So that's the only thing I would say, is that sometimes people can be so disheartened when they don't get that training contract that they wanted, or they don't get that SIP placement, that summer placement. But often it all comes good, and if you're prepared to stick it out, if you know, if you're prepared to put in the graft, it'll all work itself out anyway. None of it's the end of the world ever.
I think that's it. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's always a mix between being overly planning and trying to sort of get everything down to a T, and actually sometimes just rolling with the punches that life gives you. And in a sense, it's very clear that, in a way, I'm going to take credit here for this, as a graduate of the law school in UL, you had the skills that enabled you to see those opportunities and to grasp those opportunities. And as you say, at the end of the day, it will all work out if you put the effort into it and you have the talent and the ability, as you clearly do. Listen, Laura, it's been lovely talking with you, and I want to thank you so much for giving up your valuable time here. It's been a great conversation and a huge insight. Finance is a really important area, I think, going forward for both the country and for our graduates. And it's great to see someone of your caliber, a graduate of the law school, having made it so high in one of the most prestigious law firms in the country, A&L Goodbody. Laura, thank you very much for coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.